Hey guys, I am DM Zone. This is Gamers Oasis. Let's get into this. Okay guys, so in this video I'm going to be talking about the astral and ethereal planes, how one can travel there, what you expect to find there, and what might live there, and what kind of associated risks you might find and the activities you can do when you are there. So we have a lot to cover in this video. I hope this video won't be too long, but I have a feeling it's going to be a little bit. We're going to first start with the astral plane. Not a lot is really known about the astral plane. From what I can gather, it's basically a void that surrounds the planet for the majority, though it does kind of mimic the outside or the inside of the planet. One might say there's no sense of gravity, if that makes sense. I would also say that it seems very featureless, as there is a wind that can blow you out away from there. So there's probably not a lot of objects that block this. And while you're there, you're able to pass through objects itself. In some of the writing, it talks about the fact that there's a silver cord, and others it's nondescript. I've always played it as there's a silver cord that attaches your physical body to your astral body. Now, this wind I talked about is more predominant off of the planet than it is on the planet. However, there's always a chance the wind could be blowing, and then there's a chance you could be blown away, which is a actual term, when you're in the astral plane. So let's go ahead and talk about one of the ways you can get there. We're going to talk about the astral plane spell, which is found in Supplement 1 Greyhawk. It is both a 7th level cleric spell as well as a 9th level magic user spell. The spell allows a caster to send its form undetected to the astral plane. Now, it's going to leave your physical body, which makes this a truly out-of-body experience, as one might know it, and you're able to then travel and see other locations. So it clarifies a little bit of what I call the physical world, the physical body versus the astral plane and the astral body type of thing, stating that spells like Power Word Bind being cast on the astral body would not actually affect the astral form. However, the sentience leaves the body, therefore you do not know what's happening to your body while you're away from it, which could mean that your physical body is being destroyed and you don't necessarily know what's going on. It also states that you're able to cast spells while in the astral plane and potentially make it through to the physical world. Now, there is a chance this would fail, and there's a chance there could be a reaction to the failure. Let's go over that briefly. Essentially, every level of spell, so a 3rd level spell would be 15%, a 9th level spell would be 45%. It doesn't have anything necessarily to do with your actual level. And the example they give in the book is like this. If a level 18 caster is casting a 6th level spell, there's a 30% chance the spell will fail. So it's 5% per level. That's based off of the 6th level, not off of the 18th level. So it's the level of the spell. There's also a 12% chance, or 2% per level, that if the spell fails, you will be sent reeling or cascading or falling or forced back, whatever adjective you want to use there, to your body. Now, interestingly, not only is the cleric level 2 levels lower at 7th level, which is their cap, I want to be fair, but all their percents for that are half. So the cleric would have a 15% chance to cast that level 6 spell, and would only have a 6% chance of being returned to the body if it failed. As the spell continues to stay, if the physical body is destroyed, or your astral body is sent beyond the range of the spell, as in blown away by wind, then it immediately sends you to the lowest level of hell, gibbering and shrieking, basically. Writhing in pain would be the great way of looking at it, I guess, on the floor of the 1st level of hell. Now, there's no information on the 1st level of hell, so this is kind of what your referee makes reference to. Also, even though we have people being sent to hell and we have things like hell hounds, hell itself is never actually detailed in any of the original books. Not even really when you get into demons and whatnot in Eldritch Wizardry. There is some degree there, but not really. Not like it is in later editions. So the duration of this spell is a little bit different too. It has variables. So not the typical variables one would imagine. This actually has an indoors or subterranean, aka in a dungeon type variable. If you're in the subterranean, it lasts for 12 turns, and if you're outdoors, it lasts for 8 hours. So basically 2 hours versus 8 hours. Also, the range of this is very different. 24 inches for subterranean, which is only 240 feet, versus 100 miles. This is per level from 18th level. So if you're 18th level, that's 24 inches. If you're 19th level, that's 48, and so on. I'm not sure how much this actually matters. How many people are going to be casting this spell and how many people are going to be like 19th and 20th level to get these different ranges. It seems a bit nuanced for a very small number of people. Movement is also an oddity, having the same type of subterranean of 12 inches or the normal movement of a human versus outdoors, which has 100 miles per turn. Again, also adjusting for those above 18th level. One of the few magic items that work on astral bodies, though, is Dust of Appearance. When it is thrown into the air, an astrally projected figure becomes totally visible, which really makes me want that to happen and for the person doing it to not actually know why. And maybe not just like an astral projected bad guy or person, maybe some of the horrors and creatures that you could run into while in the astral plane. Another item that interacts with the astral plane to any degree is the Gem of Seeing, which allows you to see things that are projected or living or traveling through the astral plane. I think that's very interesting. Again, there are things that I would want to bring to the game that would be new to the people or to my game, really. It's kind of a rabbit hole I haven't gone down, but there are a lot of things that you could add to the game. And I think by the end of this video, you'll understand some of the things I'm talking about. In Supplement 3, there's a lot to be said. This has a primary source of information on the astral and ethereal plane, but there's virtually no components of this in the strategic review or in the Dragon magazine that is significant at all. You have to go all the way to Dragon magazine 67 to find any sort of information, and that is for 1E. There's a couple monster references I'm going to go over here in a minute in the strategic review, but they're not, well, when I get there, you'll see what I'm talking about. Now, Eldritch Wizardry does have the Psionic. The Psionic is really the master of the ethereal and astral plane. Everyone else is kind of a tourist. They have the ability to go there through astral projection, which is close to the spell, but it is different, and there's a lot of variance, shall we say. For example, when they are walking or running, they can move at a normal pace or they can run at 18 inches. They can fly as basically fast as a bird of prey, known as a roc, which literally is known for picking up and flying with elephants, for example, at 48 inches a turn, which is kind of insane. Also, that goes faster. But their way of doing it is not necessarily character level. They have levels of mastery, and it doubles for every level of mastery. So by the time they get to 10th level mastery, which is their highest level, they're traveling, regardless of how they're traveling, at the speed of light. This also clarifies that there are dangers out there that are twofold. First, that you might meet a creature which can travel and operate in the astral plane, and that there are things out there, such as demons and medusas and basilisks, that can gaze into these realms and attack you. If a gaze attack from Medusa, Basilisk, Gorgon, any of those things were to affect you, it turns you basically into a statue right there, and then severs the silver cord, which it makes reference to in this book, severing your body from your astral body. So even if you were to be turned back into flesh, it would not help you because your astral body has had the silver cord disconnected. And this version of the book, instead of sending you to hell, it just says both parts of your body are dead. Now, I've made reference to this thing called psychic wind. Here's more of the rules specifically. There's some sort of astral weather, I guess you could say, that makes this space sometimes hard to navigate. There's a 10% chance that the wind will be blowing within 100 miles of your physical body. And I feel like there's some information out there that's not quite making sense. But basically, there's a 50% chance that if you go beyond that 100 miles, and there's a 90% chance if you're up in the space itself, off the planet, that the winds could start up or come. I don't know if a certain amount of duration you have to make these checks. So it's not windy when you show up, but it's windy by the time you leave. If there is wind, there's a couple possibilities. As I've said, the technical term of being blown away, which snaps your silver cord. So basically death for both bodies. There's also a chance that you will fail some sort of an attempt and become lost. And when this happens, the psionicist becomes lost in their own mind for a D10 days. There's also another condition which causes a greater loss in your mind, where you're lost for D100 days. Now, how one becomes lost is you attempt the spell, you fail, you get sent back to your body. They say that there's a chance that you basically, or you get lost in your mind and have a hard time recovering from exiting astral plane in this way. There's another psionic ability which is related to the astral plane called Mind Bar, B-A-R. This protects the physical body while the astral body is away. It seems that while you're away from your body, that certain things like magic jar could be used on your physical body, or something like a demon could literally, or a devil could literally come and possess your physical body, not separating your astral body, but preventing you from being able to go back to the host, your physical body. So Mind Bar prevents that from happening. There's a 10% per level of mastery. At 100, you become unable to be possessed in this way, and you know the physical location of anything that is trying to possess your body. I don't believe that the magic user or cleric has any way to protect themselves in this way, unless maybe the cleric had or the magic user had maybe a protection from evil spell put upon them before they did this. So let's go ahead and jump out of the astral plane and kind of reference sort of the ethereal plane, something that kind of travels in and with the astral plane as well as the physical world, as we're calling it. This also can be partially accessed by psionicists. Clerics and magic users do not have the ability to actually access this. The ethereal plane is not well described either. I would say it's sort of a shadow world that is emotionally linked, so that a father and a son would look at the same house, maybe the house they grew up in, and they would see different things. And then maybe if there was a war, the grandson or whatever, someone else, would see something completely different, like maybe the ruins of a building. Now, a person who is in both of these realms or is in the ethereal plane is actually able to interact with the terrain around them. And if they're in the physical world interacting with the ethereal world, they could use the ethereal world to climb or go on top of or enter something, where you can't do that in the astral world. That's one of the main differences. However, if in your version of it, it's different and that's not there, then you might run into problems that would be hard to explain because no one else can see it, because they don't have the same shared experiences and might be viewing things differently. However, I like to say this is probably not as static, and the idea of what is linked and tied to your emotional knowledge might change as your emotional state also changes. So some things could shift in and out of reality, causing this fog of war, this warping, this waving of hands to have certain things done, if that makes sense. For example, if you were to run into a creature they would probably perceive the ethereal world very differently than you. So when you think there's a wall there, there may not be. And when you don't see a wall, maybe they do see a wall. As stated in the astral plane, this plane really doesn't have a gravity either. A person can go laterally through this world and sort of swim around. However, I don't necessarily think there's like water. It's not like that type of thing. It's just a little bit more viscosity to it. And for sure, interacting with objects still needs to occur for like complete like flight per se, or at least having some sort of greater mastery. However, since traveling through the ether is not seen by those in the physical plane as well, it tends to be a very scary place filled with horrific creatures that you would love to avoid, and would love to avoid the people in the physical world kind of minding their own business, or at least going from point A to point B without being seen. So psychics use this thing called etherealness, which works the same way as oil of etherealness or the armor of etherealness. It basically, they alter the vibrations of their body, allowing them to carry up to 50 encumbrance, or basically pounds, coin weight, per level of mastery, so up to 500 for the 10th level of mastery, which means that they can enter the plane, travel, and then exit the plane with this weight. Though this is not the same as the astral plane, there is a chance, a very small chance, most situations it's only 1% chance, of astral wind actually being there and maybe like an overlapping area that could sweep you away and blow you away, like the technical term. Then there's a chance that the seance becomes lost, doubles. They're not killed, as there is no silver cord to snap, but they could get lost and then have to try and find their way out, which could be a real problem. If they do not leave before they run out of psionic strength, they become lost, truly lost, and remain on this plane for the amount of time rolled in the dice. So a D10 days or a D100 days. In Strategic Review 3, there are 2 ethereal creatures that live there, Windwalkers and Ghosts. I'm going to talk more about that in just a second. In the Supplement 3, Eldritch Wizardry, there are a lot more choices. So there you have the Cockatrice, the Basilisk, the Gorgon, something called a Catablebus, if I pronounce that right, who can also attack those in the astral plane as well as the ethereal plane. And it will kill an astral body if they fail their gaze attack, and turn an ethereal body to stone if it can somehow make it to the ethereal plane of existence. Okay, so invisible stalkers and probably windwalkers and ghosts can all move through the astral and ethereal planes, though it is seen that those on the astral plane can only see dimly lit creatures. It's also worth pointing out that one can meet another psionic character in the astral and ethereal plane, as this would be very rare, and you potentially could meet one of the super fragile magic users and clerics also in these realms. I've already stated that demons are able to navigate the astral plane, but they're often seen in the ethereal plane, and there's a 10% chance when you roll a wandering monster that it's actually going to be a demon regardless of your level, so it's good to be wary of that. There's also a lawful good type of horse that travels amongst the clouds called a Chirin. These can be encountered as well as the Shidu, which looks a lot like a Lamasu with a human head winged creature, a body of a bull, who are also sometimes called watchers and believed to be watching over the humankind. I've spoken about in my Defining Evil video of a creature called an intellect devourer and also the mind flare. But the intellect devourer has an awareness that allows it to both perceive the astral plane, the ethereal plane, and the physical world all at the same time. They're able to shift to these other planes to flee situations if they want, and they can also fight in the ethereal plane, and they have a highly maligned attitude towards sentient life, basically from the physical plane. There is actually such a thing called a thought eater, And these horrid creatures are unintelligent dwellers of the ether. Though they can sense into the physical world, they tend to not interact with it or have any real ability to interact. But if you were to go to their realm, they would be able to interact with you and probably would immediately. Their appearance is a skeletal body of a platypus with an enormous oversized head, which can be absolutely terrifying for those who see him. The method it uses to navigate is to swim with its large webbed paws. If on the ethereal plane, they're able to physically attack you there, and the only defense against such attacks is magical items. Some psionic attacks and defenses and related powers will be able to thwart these creatures, or being able to cast maybe a mind blank spell. There's also a creature called a Coatl, so Couatl. This is also known as a feathery serpent, maybe winged serpent, that are rarely found outside of warm jungles, flying around through the ether. Due to their intelligence and magical abilities in shapeshifting and this type of stuff, those who encounter them often refer to them as being celestial creatures, potentially gods. Now, interestingly enough, in Supplement 1, Greyhawk, there are phase spiders, which are very similar to spiders in appearance, but they have the ability to shift their body into the ethereal plane and to basically move around and to avoid combat. What I did not know until actually looking into this more is that if you're to cast Phase Door on them, it locks them in the prime material, the physical world, for 7 combat rounds, allowing them to be interacted with. If you have the armor of etherealness or the oil of etherealness on you, you're able to still interact with them normally if they've shifted. So there's several ways to combat that. Lastly, but certainly not least, there are cerebral parasites, which are psychic draining parasites that tend to latch onto psychics from the ethereal plane, draining their ability to do psychic abilities while they're either in the astral, ethereal, or the physical world. If they have done enough draining, they will actually reproduce, and then those will continue to follow along with the same process of draining from the psychic. There is some ability to interact and fight with these creatures, as I've said a couple times, in either the astral or the ethereal plane, but they are limited. Adventures could be found in these spaces. Psionics probably have the ability to travel to these locations and to do more. There's probably parallel worlds that are very different. It does make reference to, in vagueness, different planes of existence that probably be very different. This would be probably travelable by the astral plane, kind of like a Spelljammer type of thing I could see. But a traveler doing this would not have complete control, and it would be very high risk. But they could have a chance to commune with friendly powers or something else out there. For all gods essentially have the ability to go there and to interact and probably come from there or have their homes out there. In Supplement 4, Gods, Demigods, and Heroes, it talks a lot more about this, about the ability to travel through the ethereal plane and astral bodies, where gods will have their own physical bodies as well, or have to leave them on their home of plane of existence while they travel into these different areas. So this interaction with the phase spiders and Dimension Door makes me really wonder how certain spells could be altered or manifested maybe, or could do different things like psionic spells being able to adjust the vibrations of a creature who's ethereal, maybe disrupting them, causing them to be able to be hit in the physical world, or doing damage to them as it basically jaunts them out of the plane of existence they're normally used to living in. Lots of things like that seem very interesting to me. If this becomes a major part of my game, like I said earlier, I could definitely see psionic spells being a big thing, and for some sort of spell jamming type of thing to exist. Is there anything I missed in these two realms? Is there anything you would like to know more about? Let me know in the comments what I got right and what I got wrong. Thank you. Have a good day, and see you guys in the next one.